From now through Tuesday, you can actually get 30% off your entire order on gfuel.com by using code IMMORTAL at checkout. If you want to snag a new tub, shaker, or starter pack, or if you do want to try G Fuel for the very first time, definitely take advantage of those increased savings while that 30% boost is active. And now on to the regular video. We've now had a few days to experience what Modern Warfare is all about this year, with its pretty interesting dynamics and approaches to various elements that we're used to seeing in Call of Duty. And so far, some of those dynamics and approaches have been well received, and some have not. Regardless of what things you like and what you may not though, there's no denying that MW certainly does not feel like the typical Call of Duty game that we are used to seeing. Everything from the customization options to the gameplay itself is approached differently this time around, and thus you might find yourself struggling in some places, whereas in the past you weren't running into those same problems. And those struggles might be rooted in a few simple mistakes you're making in-game. So today we're breaking down 11 mistakes you definitely want to avoid making here in COD MW. But before we jump into that, if you are new here or if you are a part of the 57% of viewers who are not subscribed, you'll find all the latest news and intel for Modern Warfare right here on the channel, so feel free to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all of that. And if you enjoyed the video, let me know by dropping a like rating on it, as it would be much appreciated. And now let's get into 11 mistakes you need to avoid here in MW. Starting off, we're going to focus on a brand new mechanic introduced into Call of Duty this year, and that is the ability to super sprint or double sprint by double tapping your sprint button. Super sprint allows your character to move at an increased speed for a short amount of time. However, you sacrifice the ability to ready your gun faster after sprinting, which is something that is going to cause a lot of deaths if you aren't cautious in the process. By now, I'm sure plenty of you guys are familiar with just how campy this game can be at times. It seems like a lot of players don't really like to run around all that much, and thus getting caught sprinting is bad enough. But getting caught while double sprinting is even worse. And more often than not, if somebody is already posted up, ADS'd, or even just simply walking or crouching around, and you meet them head on while you're double sprinting, you're probably going to be on the respawn screen before you know it. So just be wary when using the double sprint feature. It's really the most effective when getting out of your spawn or running through an area where you know the enemies will not be, and it's really not super useful when charging into a choke point mid-game or into the enemy's spawn due to the drawbacks and checks and balances of the feature itself. While we are on the topic of mobility though, and while we were just emphasizing how important it is to not play too aggressive, at the same time you can also hurt your mobility in this game unintentionally in some cases, which is going to result in some less than desirable gameplay. This mistake primarily lies in the gunsmith feature, which is about as complex as it gets when it comes to the loadout and class customization that we've seen in Call of Duty. And while you can create some really cool and efficient class setups in gunsmith, some attachments coinciding with others can create some serious problems when it comes to ADS in and sprint out speed times. I know from personal experience, I ended up creating an M4A1 class that really had next to no recoil between my muzzle, barrel, and stock attachments, but I also noticed that my sprint out time and my ADS in time was absolutely horrendous on the same setup. So for any kind of rush heavy playstyle, that setup was completely useless, as I would get outgunned in more engagements than I'd honestly like to admit. So when creating your loadout, definitely make sure you are paying attention to the cons of each attachment, because you could end up making the mistake of hurting your mobility in the end. Moving on, another mistake you might be making is overlooking your daily challenges and missions that are available to complete. When it comes to unlocking some cool in-game content like blueprints and also an absolute ton of XP, the missions are going to be your best friend, as not only are there a ton of different missions to choose from outright, but each mission in and of itself also holds a handful of specific challenges to complete as well, each offering up new rewards in the form of XP bonuses and customization options. So if you are looking to level up faster and gain access to some of the most exclusive content and rare blueprints in the game, and you're not actively searching through your missions or checking your daily challenges, you are making a pretty big mistake and missing out on a ton of extra XP and unlocks. Now, another thing that originally I wasn't too aware of is how important character chatter or character callouts are in-game. Most of the time in Call of Duty, your character in-game isn't really saying anything too important, nor are your teammates' characters. But in this game, the players will literally call out enemy positions left and right. Sometimes they'll say more precise callouts like there's an enemy near the bus or by the bridge, and other times the callouts are a bit more vague, but regardless, there's been more than a handful of times where my player in-game has notified me of an enemy nearby that I definitely would not have seen otherwise, so it is really worth it to pay attention to that in-game chatter. Continuing on down the list, the next mistake you might be making is simply ignoring the objective, specifically in Domination, and even more specifically in Ground War Domination. Now, getting triple capped is bad enough, but in Ground War Dom, you can actually get pentacapped. Is that the right terminology? I guess I'm gonna roll with it. Basically, the enemy team can hold all 5 flags at once and seriously cause some problems for you, because if the enemy team does hold all 5 flags at one time, it initiates the DEFCON warning. And if you don't cap a flag within that 30-second timer, a DEFCON nuke will go off, which ends the game and hands you a swift loss. I know for a fact that some people, myself included at times, avoid flags when they're on a streak, but now if you do that in Ground War Dom, and your team isn't necessarily super OBJ oriented, you could be on the receiving end of a nuke, and that's really never a good time. The next mistake you could be making lies solely in the night maps, so it is a bit more of a peculiar mistake, but nonetheless it is a pretty significant one at the same time. While playing on a night map, you are equipped with a laser sight when your NVGs are active, and this laser sight is not only visible to you when you ADS. ADSing on night maps is already different from the normal maps as you don't fully ADS, but rather it's more of a refined hipfire, and with your sights drawn, your laser is completely visible on the enemy's screen. Meaning if you are pre-aiming a corner or a corridor, the enemy team will know where you're looking and when you're coming, completely foiling all your plans of getting the upper hand in the engagements. Now back onto the topic of leveling up, obviously double XP is going to be a massive help when it comes to ranking up faster, but you might actually be making the mistake of wasting your double XP time, as for whatever reason, I'm not sure if this is a glitch or if it's intentional, but your double XP actually counts down in the pre-game lobby. So if you activate an XP token and then sit in a lobby for too long, you could end up wasting a lot more of your limited time double XP than you might realize. So before you activate it, make sure you are ready to jump into a match right away to take full advantage of it. While on the topic of maximizing your XP, sticking to just one weapon in specific is also going to limit your overall XP potential. The more weapons you're using and leveling up and unlocking camos on, the more overall XP you are going to be getting in a shorter amount of time. Whereas if you only use the M4A1 for the first while, you won't be getting as much XP compared to if you switched up your arsenal a little bit, so just keep that in mind when leveling up. Another mistake you could be making in this game has to do with the mounting feature, as you might mount an object and think you are relatively well protected based on the angle you have once mounted. But I've actually found that in a lot of cases, you're not, mainly when you're mounting something from the left or right and not mounting onto a head glitch. When you go to mount a corner or another wall, it might feel like you are actually pretty well protected and that all the enemies can see is just your shoulders and your head peeking around a corner. But actually, you are way more exposed than that, and mounting doesn't really offer that much protection, unless of course, once again, you are mounting a head glitch. So just be mindful, mounting is more so geared towards recoil reduction and not so much increased cover in most cases. Mistake number 10 you could be making is not aiming for the head enough in gunfights, because here in COD MW, more than ever before, headshots can seriously swing a gunfight in one direction or another. Obviously, headshots have always had a damage multiplier, but that multiplier this year seems more dominant than ever, as a shot to the head just once in a fight normally means that person hitting the headshot is going to come out alive. And that's where sometimes camping in a head glitch or mounting in one can actually come back to haunt you, because obviously if all the enemies can see is your head, they're going to deal a ton of damage unless you take them out relatively quickly. So definitely make sure you are focusing on going for headshots in general. Then lastly, the final mistake for today that you guys might be making is limiting yourself to just the multiplayer experience. In the past, what you did in the campaign or Spec Ops didn't really have too much of an impact on multiplayer. But in this game, you can actually unlock certain operator characters by completing various campaign missions, and you also unlock some by completing Spec Ops challenges too. And in addition to that, you can also level up weapons in Spec Ops just at a slower rate, and in general, playing the other modes outside of MP is actually pretty beneficial this year in more ways than one. So with all of that being said, those are 11 mistakes that you want to avoid here in COD MW. If you enjoyed the video, let me know. Drop a like on it, give it a big old thumbs up, it would be much appreciated. And of course, if you are new here and you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the world of Call of Duty, ranging from news to leaks to updates and everything else in between, feel free to subscribe with your post notifications turned on. That way you'll always know when I post a new video. As I mentioned earlier, from now until the 29th, my G Fuel discount code IMMORTAL will get you 30% off your entire order. So if you do want to snag any G Fuel products, now is definitely the best time to do so. Once again, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the battlefield. Peace out.